back, everyone, to another Good Takes podcast. I'm Sam, joined by my sister Katie. And today we're taking a quick pivot from The Lord of the Rings to talk about something that we've both actually really gotten into these past couple of weeks, as I'm sure many of you have as well. And that is the television adaptation of The Last of Us. So I grew up playing the games. I'm quite familiar with the story. And it's great that so many people now that didn't get to play the games are experiencing this incredible story for the first time, which is my sister here. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, excited to dive into it. And we both have kind of different perspectives on this one because I never did play the video game, despite you telling me countless of times that I should, and that it's one of the best video game stories you've ever read or played, I guess. I remember you introducing me very early on to just the intro clip. So that is the one piece I'd seen before starting the show, but it was all new territory to me. And I'm excited to get into it because I absolutely loved it. And I'm really interested in your take as someone who both played the game and watched the show, because I don't have that same experience.
Yeah, it was quite cool, but there were many times throughout the show when I did wish that I hadn't, just because only because it's such a great adaptation where um it's a cool experience to be like, wow, this is exactly how it happens in the game, which is perfect in a lot of ways. But then it also robs you of a lot of the subtle I don't know, twists and turns of the story of the narrative.
Well, it's experiencing it for the first time is something I got to do
Yeah.
that, you didn't really have that opportunity. Um, so yeah, I think that's really cool.
No, agreed. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess we can just jump right in. We can kind of just go over, we'll do the entire first season here. But just as an overarch, what were your impressions of the show? Did you enjoy it?
I freaking loved this show. It was so good. The very first episode, I texted you and was like, this is one of the best TV shows I've ever seen.
Mhm.
I already loved Pedro Pascal to some degree, but after this, I mean, I've seen all the memes of like everyone calling him daddy or zaddy or whatever the hell he is. Absolutely be my father, please. I don't know if he's necessarily old enough for that, but I would so be down for that. I thought he played the role so well. I
Mhm.
loved Bella Ramsey as Ellie. I just literally every single episode had me on the edge of my seat, and I thought it was a perfect sequence the way it started right up to the ending. I'm so invested. Honestly, I
Yeah.
think I would give it like a solid 9.5 out of 10, and I don't even know what the point 5 is. I just don't want to give it a perfect, but it's so good. Well, what did you
Yeah,
think?
fair.
Was it true to the game?
Yeah, it was exceptionally true. It was far more true than I thought it would be. And my expectations weren't actually that low going in because I believe Craig Mason is his name. I think he was the lead writer of the show, and he did that Chernobyl series, which is also on HBO, which is excellent. But the writer of the game, Neil Druckmann, he was also a co-writer. Those two wrote it together. So I knew that it was going to be a true adaptation, but I didn't expect it to be. I mean, there are so many moments in the show that are verbatim from the game. There's shots that are like the cinematography is exactly how the camera was set up in the game. And on all of those moments, I thought it was exceptional. I thought it was well done. There were some changes, but at least right now, none come to mind where I disagreed with them, actually. And I think in some ways, uh, the changes that were introduced, I actually think it makes the narrative stronger. But we'll get into that. But yeah, it's the best adaptation of almost anything I've ever seen, barring maybe The Lord of the Rings.
Right? Well, and that's for another time. No, that's very cool. And I was talking with some people who made an interesting point that because there were visual examples already, because the game had these in sequence video clips, it was almost easier to replicate, because when you're trying to replicate a book into a movie, you are at a disadvantage because as a reader, you've created an image for yourself that is never going to be replicated for everybody on screen.
Mhm.
Whereas with this, you already knew what Joel looked like. You knew what Ellie looked like. You knew what the visual backdrop was. So bringing that to life on screen in a real capacity with actors and with, a scenery background was maybe a little easier because there was actually a visual example already.
Totally. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And especially because the game itself is exceptionally cinematic, I guess would be the best term. Naughty Dog, the developer of the games, a lot of their video games are structured in a way that seems like they're not trying to emulate a movie, but I mean, I don't know if you've heard of the Uncharted series, but they're wildly
Hmm.
popular. It's like
I
the
saw that
modern
movie
Indiana
too.
Jones.
It's like they
Yeah, yeah,
create a story
exactly.
throughout their games.
Yeah, so they have an excellent ability, but I think you're right. It's a little easier to adapt something that is essentially already in some sense filmed.
Hmm.
I saw some controversy about Bella Ramsey, because I agree with you first and foremost. Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, I think knocked it out of the park. I think both of them are honestly perfect. I know that some people were a little hesitant with Bella because she looked too young or so.
Which is funny
But
because she's older. They're like older than the
yeah,
character.
I don't know how old she is, but I know Ellie's supposed to be 14. But I'm sure the Bella
I think
Ramsey's
Bella is
probably in her early
19.
20s or something. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love both of their performances. They totally sold it. Um, Bella has Ellie's wits. It was very easy. You could tell that it came off of her quite well. And Joel or Pedro Pascal captured Joel. Like I was looking at some of the cutscenes from the game. They re-released the game for the PlayStation 5, and they just kind of they remade the graphics, uh, which is essentially all I need to know. But he looks incredibly similar in a good way.
Hmm.
So yeah.
I mean, you had sent to me some of the clips. So I mentioned earlier when you were trying to convince me to play the video game years ago, you did make me watch the introduction clip to the game. So I knew how the first episode was going to go. And I was really surprised at how true to that whole scene the show was. So if they continued with that authenticity, then I can't imagine anyone who loved the game was too disappointed in a general aspect. I know you
So
mentioned
did
there were
you
a couple of other
remember?
changes. Yes, because it
Okay.
stayed with me. It was a horrifying ending, and I couldn't fully remember. And let's just preface here, I know the last episode just came out, but spoilers galore. So if you haven't watched it,
Yeah,
go
yeah.
watch it and come back. But I couldn't fully remember everything that was happening. And then in the end of the first episode, when Joel is running with Sarah in his arms, I just immediately covered my eyes. I was like, Jordan, something bad is going to happen. I can't fully remember. And it just kind of started to come back to me. And I was like, I knew what was going to happen a second before it happened. And it was a horrifying experience. And I'm sure if you were watching that without knowing what was going to happen, it was just so shocking because they really took the time in that first episode to introduce Sarah and make you fall in love with her. She was so sweet.
Totally.
And oh, it broke my heart to see that. And so even knowing in the split second before it happened what was going to happen, I was so emotional about it. It was crazy.
Yeah, sure. No, so I mean, I would have shown you that it has to be close to 10 years. I feel like the game came out in 2011 or something. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I now regret having done that because I think it would have been a little more intense anyways, but I don't think it robs necessarily from the experience. But of course, I didn't know that it would ever be a show or a movie so many years ago. But to kick it off, I think that's actually a really good place to start is the introduction of the show, the first episode, and Sarah, because you're right, they get you totally vested in her character. I don't know the actress's name, but she did a great performance. Um,
She's
yeah.
perfect.
So
Yeah, you're so
because
invested in her and her whole journey and the symbolism that because at this point we've watched so many different shows and movies and my husband and I always, probably very annoying to other people, but we'll notice a trope in a show and be like, "Oh, they're putting a lot of emphasis on this. This is going to be important." And her getting Joel's watch fixed, like we were just like this watch is going to be so important, and then the theme and the symbol of the watch throughout the show, oh
Mhm.
my god, I'm probably going to cry talking about this because the show is so emotional,
It
but
is.
I love the way they set it up.
I think that I think I teared up every single episode. I
Yeah.
think that every one, there's 9 episodes in total. Every one was a gut punch. Um, yeah, and it's great because I think the people that were like preliminarily aware of the show or the game kind of knew, okay, post-apocalyptic, some father-daughter kind of thing going on. So I have to imagine that many of the people that went in for the first time not knowing just thought that it would be Sarah and
Yes.
Joel
I think
surviving in the
so.
post-apocalyptic world. So it's a killer opening. It's one of the greatest openings of I think believe any narrative that I've seen. I don't want to talk it up too much, but Yeah.
Oh, I texted you after that first episode and I was like, that was amazing. Like, I just can't believe how good it was. And it did keep its pace. There were a couple of episodes where I was like, okay, this wasn't quite as action packed. Even the second episode,
Mm.
which was so great, and there were some serious emotional elements to it. The first episode had stuck with me so much that it's like, oh my God, they started so strong, but then it just kept coming back. I mean, I have a couple of favorite episodes and I'm sure we'll get into all of it. But episode 1, 3, 8, and 9 are like my tops by far. I just thought they were all so good. So we can get into episode by episode, but I mean, to say that half of a series was like some of my favorite episodes of all time is pretty strong. And that's not to say the other episodes weren't great. They just didn't stand out to me quite as much. And those 4 episodes I genuinely cried during. And the other ones, maybe it was just a tear.
Yeah, sure. So how did you find the pacing overall of the show?
I did really like it. I thought it was great. I think that they didn't lean in too much into the infected being the whole focus. And then similarly, they didn't lean into just people being terrible as the whole focus either. There was such a good balance of that. And the characters that they made me hate, I mean, I just had such a visceral reaction where I either loved or hated someone. But I did find that the pacing was really strong because they would wrap up a story within the story pretty quickly. In some cases, I was really sad. Like, I wanted to see more of Sam. Oh, that broke my heart. And I'm totally jumping ahead, but we'll talk about that. But then there were other people, and God, I can't even remember her name. I should have come more prepared. But that woman who was leading the QZ that had like been taken over again by the people.
Catherine,
I can't
I think
remember her name. Catherine. Yes. So
that's a show
hated
edition.
her.
She's not in the game.
Is she? Okay. I hated her, but in a good way. The way that you like hate Dolores Umbridge. I'm going to reference
Yeah,
her in
yeah.
every
No,
episode.
that's a good comparison. She does have
And she
Dolores
did a
Umbridge
great job.
vibes,
She
like the
was such a
happy-go-lucky
good
villain.
actress. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
like she looks like she's supposed to be so sweet and kind and the high-pitched voice, and then she just pure evil. But the way that just as I was starting to get so sick of her demise immediately, it was, maybe some people would argue it was a little too fast, but I thought the pacing was perfect. Was it similar to the game, or did they rush things a bit?
No, it was very similar. Because the game, kind of how the structure of the game is broken up is by like season. So you start in the summer. I think you start in the summer, and then you go to the fall, winter, and then spring. And that's essentially, and then so in each of the seasons of the year is when those little self-contained stories come in.
Right.
So it was actually accurate. They didn't leave. Now it's been many years since I've played the game. I'm familiar with it because I've gone through it many
when
times.
did you last play it?
Geez, maybe 2015, around that time, 2016. I'm familiar. Is that all Grim?
Yeah, that's Grim. Hang on, quick pause. He lost his bully stick, so we'll just cut this out.
Yeah, feed him up.
Okay, so last time you played it, sorry, you were saying last time you played it was 2015?
Yeah, around then. So it's a game that I always would go back to. One thing that, and I've spoken to you about this, one thing that I love from the games and the show now from the beginning was the music, the soundtrack. I'll butcher his name, so I don't even want to say it. Gustavo Santiago or something like that. He did the music. He did the music for both. I think there was another artist who helped him, but I forget his name. But anyways, the music always stuck with me. I play a bit of the guitar. It was a big inspiration for that. And so even though I've not done like a full playthrough in a few years, I would find myself over the years just going back to certain scenes just because I don't know, they're so satisfying, emotional. You really get invested with these characters. And yeah, I was, as you know, like we grew up playing video games with our brother and a household of gamers. I certainly have spent probably too much time playing.
I'd love to know the hours.
Yeah, I wouldn't. But I always sway towards the more narrative ones. So I was always aware that video games as a narrative medium was a little underrated, but it was around this time that it was like, wow, like this is when video games are going to be taken seriously as a narrative, like a way to tell stories. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And as we can see, because I mean it's the biggest show on the earth now.
Yeah, and it lent itself to a perfect sequence for a season. I know they're going to do a second season. I know there's a Last of Us Part 2. I know nothing about it, so don't spoil it for me.
Wow, so
But
nothing.
no, I'm really excited to dive into that too.
But I was wondering because you had no idea how this was going to end, and we'll talk about the ending later. But I thought when they announced that the second season was coming, though it's exciting and I am excited for it, uh, I don't know if like it kind of in my mind, I thought it might take away from people that were watching now and removing some of the suspense. Because if there's a second season, you immediately know that someone's making it out alive, you know? It
Well,
kind of
maybe,
it does
but
not, you know, like
in that same sense, like there's multiple, and this is maybe a poor example, but there's multiple seasons of Black Mirror, and you're never going to see the same characters. My understanding
yeah,
of a
true.
second season was at least that this world was still alive, but they could have easily passed the torch to a new character that was introduced, or shown you life after whatever happens. I mean, you
Mhm.
learn very early on in the season that Ellie is can't be infected, right? So she has
Mhm.
to have some sort of cure running through her veins. So, it could have easily been interpreted that the second season is going to show the result of her cure and how that's
Yeah,
supposed to
very
impact
true.
the world. I don't know. I honestly thought this whole time that Joel was going to die. I was just ready for it,
Yeah.
on the edge of my seat when he got wounded, like later on, sixth or seventh episode. I was like, this is it. No, I'm not watching this show anymore. Not without Pedro.
No, it was
So I
dead.
think they still did a good job of keeping us in suspense, as to who's going to make it or not. And I honestly feared for their lives every episode.
Yeah, yeah, no, and you're right. It does do that, and HBO is just great. It's awesome that they have such a catalog of shows that are uh excellent, I suppose, and especially with Game of Thrones, where you've kind of come to not expect, but it's not gonna
No one is
everything is on
safe.
the table, exactly. But you mentioned when Joel gets seriously injured, how that's done in the game, it's essentially the same, but throughout the game you play as Joel up until that point when he gets skewered. It happens a little differently, but it's essentially the same. And then it goes to black, and for the first time, it fades in, and you're playing as Ellie, and it's months later,
Right.
or not months, it's a week later because he's still wounded.
Right.
But they did a really good job with that in the show, thinking like, wow, he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wasn't sure how that would play off because of the game. It's like you think he's dead because of it. There's a change of gameplay. You're now playing as Ellie.
Right.
Joel's nowhere to be seen. So yeah,
Right.
they handled it masterfully.
Oh my gosh. Okay, one more second. My dog keeps pushing his stick out of his
Yeah.
cage.
While Katie's fiddling with her dog. If you guys like this content and you want to see more, just make sure to subscribe or like the video. It really helps out. Just gets it out there. And hopefully we can get some more content, reviews or hot takes, good takes, you could say,
Yeah.
that you guys want to see in the future.
Yeah, we want to keep doing more of these. So that's awesome. Absolutely. Anything. And commenting too always helps, whether it's to rip our takes to shreds,
Mhm.
tell us if it's a good take or a bad take. We're all ears. So, anything that helps us grow and do a little better is totally appreciated.
Agreed. So let's dial it back. Let's go back to the earlier parts of the season. What did you think about the relationship between Joel and Tess? Was
I
there
thought it
anything
was
there?
nice. I didn't feel like it was super developed. It actually felt more after the fact. So we've talked a little bit about episode 1. In episode 2, this is when Joel and Tess are tasked with taking Ellie to this other Fireflies area, the Fireflies being kind of the revolutionary team, right? And so I really liked Tess's character, but I didn't really feel any connection between her and Joel. And I don't know if that was just my perspective. I don't know if it was the same in the game. I did feel that after, major spoiler, after Tess gets infected and dies, that I could see how that hurt Joel a lot more than when she was an actual character alongside him.
Hmm.
So I felt it after her death a lot more, but I didn't really see much between them. I was honestly just more excited because I knew Joel and Ellie's relationship was going to evolve, just to see
Yeah.
that. What did you
Yeah,
think?
I know, I agree with that. Part of me says that that is almost done on purpose. I think regardless, it was not rushed because there's only so much you can do in 9 episodes and they fit everything in.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right, but I think it kind of lends itself to the idea that Joel has, even though he has the capacity to still care about people, he doesn't allow himself to.
He
So
won't
you
let
kind of
himself,
get the
yeah.
hint that there's something here. How far like the romance goes, or if it's just a relationship of convenience, regardless of what it is, it wasn't what it could have been, and I think that was on purpose by the characters.
Yeah.
Because if Joel didn't have some I don't know, feelings of obligation towards Tess, he wouldn't have taken Ellie. So, I mean, he later explains it to Tommy how it was Tess's dying wish and like what was he supposed to
Mhm.
do. But I think you're right. I think that it could have been explored more. Um, but there's a lot to get through.
Yeah, I did think that I really liked Tess's character. She was such a badass, and the way she was
Mhm.
introduced, getting like beat up by that crew, and talking her way out of it, and then her ending. Oh my gosh, it was so strong and like terrifying. I was so terrified for her, and she didn't even seem that afraid, but like just committed to what she
Yeah,
was going to do, and the way she allowed the infected to get so close to her so that she could drop that grenade at the exact perfect time to destroy as many as possible, the way the tendrils of the infected that was coming at her were like coming into her mouth. Oh my God. I was just horrified, but she was a badass through and through. So I do like that
yeah, she was.
her character wasn't developed, and it wasn't just in relation to being like Joel's side piece. She like really was her own fully fleshed person. And so yes, the relationship between her and Joel was kind of cold and didn't feel, like there was a ton there. But I think you also made a good point that he's clearly closed himself off to people since Sarah. And Tess is probably experiencing some of that, closed off Joel.
Totally, yeah. But no, I think you're right. There's no real arc, but she's more of a character than just like you said, Joel's side piece.
Yeah,
Like
she has a whole
she's
badass
admirable.
persona.
Yeah, exactly. And you can tell that she's a survivor, as how Joel would put it. And I'm
Yeah.
sure she's done some horrible things herself. So yeah, I think they did a great job. The woman who was cast, I don't know her name, but she looked and played the part exceptionally well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the tendril scene was disgusting. In the
Oof.
games, it's a bit different. In the show, how the infected spread and like it seems like through the biting, that's the same. But they have this idea of not like tendrils, but what would you call it? Like the things that kind of like roots of the fungus, essentially. I
Mm.
can't believe I'm blanking on the name. But anyways, in the games, it's like spores. Um,
Oh,
which
like
which was an
airborne
interesting
spores
change.
or
Exactly. So there's many points in the game where it's like the characters have to mask up.
mm,
Ellie doesn't have to because she's immune. But that was an interesting change, and I'm not entirely sure why they opted to do it. I don't
probably the
think one is better
visual.
than the other. Yeah, it was just, I
Maybe it
would
was a
like to
little
know
too
why
soon
they
for
thought.
airborne viruses since COVID and everything.
Yeah,
And they're like, you
fair.
know what? Let's just put this a little less on the nose.
Yeah, and I guess it does give kind of this creepy element where the fungus can communicate because I believe Tess steps on a root. There's at one point in that episode around the time where she gets bit. No, you don't know it at that
Mhm.
point where I think when the clicker comes, I might be misremembering, but they step on one of these like roots, these connectors, and that like awakens
Right.
the horde.
That's in the show for sure. They
Yeah,
because you
yeah, no, that's
see
what
the
I'm saying.
people
That
wake up.
is so what
Oh,
I'm saying
okay.
is maybe that's just a way to make it a little more intimidating.
Right.
But you mentioned it at the towards the beginning. And I noticed online, I tried not to be online too much about this, even though I knew the spoilers. I just didn't. I wanted to see what people were saying, but then I realized I don't really care. But I saw that there was some complaints about how there weren't enough zombies, let's say. But I think that the balance is he giving you trouble?
One sec. We're back after a little technical difficulty on my side with a puppy
Puppy
that doesn't know
problems.
when we're recording. But anyway, to pick it up right where we had left off, you were saying, Sam, that you were seeing online, which you always take with a grain of salt, that a lot of people were complaining there wasn't enough zombies in the show.
Yeah, it seems like that was one of the few complaints levied at the show was just that there wasn't enough action overall. And then that the cordyceps, the zombies, for lack of a better word, were
Right.
not as prevalent as they should have been.
Okay, first of all,
Um,
wasn't enough action. I think I watched Joel kill like 20 different people. So what?
yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I don't agree with the criticism. I think that it was uh better served. I mean, you can't have it just be like Joel just doing gameplay loops, just shooting infected and whatnot. They give them names, and I don't know if you would remember, but they call like the more nefarious zombies like clickers who are blind but they can hear really well. There's really only one part in the show where like there's a really intense kind of scene. It's when Tess gets bit and they're trying to be really quiet. um, and then like that was great. I think it served the point. Maybe a bit more of that would be nice just to show like the threat, but it's not the story. And like on a personal like subjective level, I don't really like the zombie trope. I don't particularly love the genre, which is funny because I love this. But I was totally fine. I think that they did all they needed to do with the infected. I was never interested in the infected. They're the least interesting part of the show in my mind.
I agree. It was like a necessary danger, but also I was just so fatigued from The Walking Dead for like however many seasons it literally just ended. I felt like they had that balance really well. And there were some scary moments, and I guess there could have been a couple more of them, but I was honestly more interested in the human interactions and the people they met along the way and the development of Joel and Ellie's relationship, which blossomed
Totally.
so effortlessly throughout the whole season. So I don't have the same complaint, but I guess I understand where people are coming
No,
from.
yeah, no, I don't either. And because you're right, it's the human element. And I think I forget where this was from, but Neil Druckmann, the writer of the game, I remember he did an interview or something, and he just said about how when he was going about writing the story, his philosophy is simple story, complex characters. And I think it's a perfect, I think it's a, I mean, not perfect. I think it's a great formula though. And I think it really shines in The Last of Us because the story is very simple. It's very tropey, um, you know, but it doesn't feel like it is because like you said, the relationship between Joel and Ellie is so masterfully done. It progresses at such a great speed. It's believable. It's totally believable.
No, I totally agree. So I know we've kind of been all over the place, but we were sort of going through some of the episodes by episodes. Maybe that's a good place to just go back to and kind of continue through the chronological sequence of the show, because I think we'll also be able to address that and how it evolves, their relationship and the people they meet along the way. So we did cover the first episode. Crazy. Sarah was amazing and so shocking, even knowing it was coming, to see how well developed she was just to be gone.
Mhm.
It really sets the stage for Joel's personality, though, and his character arc throughout. Episode 2 with Tess, we talked about her quite a bit. And, I think she's an absolute badass. It was sad to see her end that way, but it was a necessary evil because we're all here for the Joel and Ellie show.
Yeah,
So,
you have to
you
kick
know,
the story off.
yeah. But I really I'd be interested in your thoughts, and I wonder how the game played this out. That episode 3, long, long time, where it was Bill and then his relationship. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the other
Frank.
guy's name. Frank, yeah. I thought that was just such a beautiful episode of any television show. Like it could have
Mhm.
been a standalone, just short. It was
Yeah, it
so
felt like
the
a movie.
symbolism of it all, it did. It felt like a short film.
No, I agree. I thought it was excellent. I also loved the episode. I think that I mean, it was slow. I really enjoyed it. It didn't progress the plot. You didn't need it. You didn't need it too. I'm glad they had it
Mhm.
because it does differ from the games quite a lot because you actually meet Bill in the games. He's alive. Um, Spoilers for anyone who's played the show and not the game, whatever. At this point, you know
Spoilers
what you're into.
galore. Just that's
Um,
exactly it.
but it's I really liked how they did it here. I think that it was Bill was a really interesting character in the games, but you don't spend a lot of time with him. They accurately portrayed him as like a doomsday prepper. You get he There's a few funny moments between Bill and Ellie. They're kind of there's some animosity and it's hilarious to watch. So you miss out on that, but overall I think it was better served to have this fleshed out of the character because in the game Bill mentions how loving someone is only good for one thing, getting you killed, and he explains how he used to have a partner. And then you play for a bit with Bill, and you find this man who has hung himself in some house, and you can tell it affects Bill, but he's got the stoic kind of uh he
Facade.
holds it in, and then he sends you off with like thanks and go fuck yourself kind of thing. But I think that this was I really loved it. I thought it was beautifully done. It also made me weep. It felt like a movie. I didn't think I was watching The Last of Us, but in the best way.
Yeah,
And that
that's how I
song,
felt too.
I
Oh my
don't I wasn't
God.
familiar with Linda Ronstadt.
Me
And
neither,
showing
but
my
I
age.
downloaded that song afterwards. It was so beautiful. And the symbolism of the dinner table, how they first started their relationship at the table on opposite sides. Bill is
Hmm.
very introverted at this point. He doesn't want to give anything away. He didn't even really want to take Frank in. And you could see him warring with that, shred of humanity
Totally.
of, do I help this person or do I just stay alive? And it's interesting that you mention in the games, he says that loving people gets you killed, because Frank ends up saving his life. Like he actually
Hmm.
lives because he loves. And
Yeah.
um and the way that they chose to end their lives together, it was really beautiful to see how people persist. I mean, even in this apocalyptic world, they had what, like 20 years, or maybe not 20, but more than a decade
Yeah, 20
together.
years. I think you're at 20.
And then they ended their lives on their own terms. And it was not because they were infected or, anything else. It was because they were, aging and they wanted to go out together. And the way that they chose to do that together, or Bill chose to do it with Frank, because Frank was like, I should be upset, but this is the most romantic thing ever. I was weeping. That episode got me. Wow, it was just one of my favorites for sure. I loved it. And you're right, it didn't further the Joel and Ellie plot, but it added a human nature to this whole show that just got me so invested.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it speaks to maybe like an overarching theme of just, like you said, like a persisting love, where yes, the world has come to an end, but people are still alive. And the reason for that is not because society necessarily functions super well, but because there are more human elements to a life. And I you brought up how they like it's their way out is romantic and whatnot. And I agree. And it was kind of interesting, especially considering the last half of the show. They're the only characters to die of old age, and I think that they deserved it. They went through a lot together. Peaceful death too. I mean, all things considered, better than losing your mind to zombies.
Right. Well, not saying there's a perfect way to go, but like, man, that would probably be my way. Beautiful dinner,
Some
red wine,
you
and
get a little sleepy. You're like,
call it a day. And also the note that Bill left to Joel was, I thought, really beautiful. And he kind of talked about how he hated people and he was kind of happy that the apocalypse happened. Like you said, he's a doomsday prepper. He was just so sick of the world. And then, he started to realize that it actually is sad. There's so much love in the world, and to lose all of this. And when he has the line to, take care of Tess, that's your path, and Ellie's reading the note out, she kind of stops there.
It was a little on the nose. I thought that part was a little on the nose, but I agree. It was very touching.
It's another time where you see how much Tess meant to Joel, because like you were saying earlier, he's totally shut himself off to love and to other people, but the way that he was impacted by what that note said just kind of showed that he, at the very least, was really hurt that he failed her, just like he failed Sarah, in his mind. And so I should think that shows that he was trying to not let himself perhaps connect as deeply with Tess as he may have otherwise, because he's already been so closed off to the world as a result of losing his daughter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so overall that was a major, that might have been the biggest change or deviation from the games, but I think it served the show for the best. I think I don't think there was anyone that I've seen anyways that has not liked that episode. A little self-contained story, but beautiful. Really great storytelling.
Yeah, I loved it. But anyway, like you said, it is kind of a sidebar. And then the next episode 4, goes back to Joel and Ellie moving along, trying to get to this Firefly, location so that they can get this cure on with and keep things going. And I didn't have a ton to say about episode 4, honestly. I'm not sure if you had anything else.
Jog my memory.
This is the one where there's the they're like they have the truck
in Kansas City.
And Bill gave them the truck and they're using that to go on. They're in Kansas City, and then I do think it's the introduction of it's Kathleen, not Catherine.
Kathleen, yeah,
Kathleen,
that's right.
Yeah, but her first introduction where she is gone like full crazy because her brother was murdered or was
right, but you don't find that out in that episode.
No, that's right. But she alludes to it, like, because she's interviewing or interrogating that older man. And she's trying to find, oh my God, Sam's brother. And I can't remember Sam's brother's name.
Henry,
yeah. She's trying to find Henry, and she is being ruthless in getting to him. And she kind of hints that it's because like her brother didn't have a chance. You don't fully know what happened, but she starts kind of teasing that out. So that episode really set the stage for the next one, episode 5, which is where Joel and Ellie actually meet up with Henry and Sam, and they try to navigate and escape Kansas City together. Although I'm backing them all over the place right now, but I think episode 4, I might be wrong, is the episode where Ellie actually has to save Joel because they're being attacked by these raiders, and she is told to hide, but Joel is in this predicament. This guy is on top of him. It looks like he's going to choke him, like he's not going to get out, and then Ellie kills him, or she doesn't kill him, but she shoots him and incapacitates him so that Joel can finish it off.
Yeah,
and I believe that is episode 4.
It's an important point. Yeah, it is. That's episode 4 when they first get in. I really like that episode because, like you said, it's the first time you actually just get to spend with Joel and Ellie. And there's that kind of, they don't particularly like each other, or at least Joel doesn't like Ellie, or he's not letting her in. But that's a great moment because I think it shows like that still Joel has some vulnerability because he apologizes to Ellie after he kind of like you said, finishes off that guy. And I thought that was a beautiful scene where he's like, he struggles to find the words, and then he's like, I'm sorry, all right. Like he's like, I'm not good at this. And she's like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
But it just kind of showed, I think that was the beginning. I mean, trial by fire kind of brings people together.
Yeah. And I think it's in the beginning of that episode, he's talking about how you do anything you can for your family. And she's like, what?
That's
I'm not
right.
family. He's like, no, you're cargo. And so
Mhm.
it's like setting the stage for how their relationship begins, but certainly not the same way that it ends
Exactly. And to
later in the
mention
season.
you mentioned the watch, and throughout the games, there's little ticks where Ellie will do something or say something that reminds him of Sarah, and he'll play with the watch. And I'm really glad that they kept that in the show. I think that was one of those moments when he's driving in the car. It's like, you do it for family.
Mhm.
Um, it's a good way when you know to look for it. It's a good way to just see the relationship growing.
Yeah.
How he just kind of fiddles with the watch. I'm really glad that they put that in. Um, yeah, and so that was a fun episode. It was similar but a little different to the games. I think they go to a different city in the games, but I forget which one. Not It doesn't matter. Um, but yeah, and so are we introduced to Sam and Henry in episode 4, or did that come in episode 5?
I think episode 4 ends with Ellie waking up because her and Joel have climbed to like the
That's
top
right.
of this apartment building, and she wakes up because Henry and Sam are standing over them. So we're not really introduced to them until the 5th episode, but they have
Mhm.
their first kind of cameo at the very end of episode 4.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
those are two great characters. What did you
I
think of
loved
them?
them. I
Yeah,
love, oh my God, Sam. I loved Sam so much. And not just because he's your namesake, but
that's
he
why I
was
love them.
just so sweet. And I thought that and I don't think in the games, he's not deaf, right? I thought I saw
No,
this on
no,
like
that was a
Twitter.
change. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. I really liked that because it
Me
added this
too.
extra element of him being really not reliant, but like really
Yeah, oh,
trusting his
absolutely.
brother.
Totally dependent on him because Henry's the only one that can speak sign language.
Right.
Um,
And the etch a sketch thing he had, where how he was communicating was really sweet. And I loved it, showed such a sweet side of Ellie because Ellie's another little badass and she is similar to Joel in that way of not necessarily expressing emotion. And we didn't just very quickly on episode 4, when Joel is apologizing to her and is like, you shouldn't have had to do that. She's like, it's not the first time I've shot someone. And you don't hear about that again until later in the season. But the way that she immediately opens up to Sam and is playing around with him and kind of gets to be a kid for a moment with
exactly.
him
Yeah.
was so nice. I knew it couldn't last. I think I was texting you. I was like, I know this kid's doomed. Like, there's no way he's sticking around.
Yeah.
So I kind of saw it coming, but it was still really sad. And I really, really liked the character. And I liked the bond between Henry and Sam. And I do think,
Mhm.
again, it showed the trust that they had to have with each other because Sam was really reliant on Henry to be honest with him about what was going on because he couldn't necessarily for himself hear or understand contextually what might be happening outside, or he might see fear on someone's face and be like, oh my gosh, what's going on. And I really liked how open Henry was with him while still trying to keep that air of confidence and like, I've got us through this, even though maybe he doesn't in the end.
Yeah, it was very well done, and I think the change actually into making Sam deaf was a boon to the show.
Yeah.
Because it, like you said, it just adds that depth. Um, and like had like the theme of how Sam draws himself as a superhero, or they have this, or from
Yes.
the comic book, I forget the name now, but what is it? Endure and Survive.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Really the only time that you get to see Ellie as a kid, and she is a playful person. And when they just get to when they're in like the bunker area and they're in the little daycare section,
Yeah.
and they just get that moment, it really was touching, and you really feel bad for these characters who like you shouldn't have to live in this world.
No.
And Henry and Joel have a great interaction there.
Well,
And
when
which
Henry
wasn't really
says, I wanted to ask you if that scene was in the game. He's like, you may not be her father, but you're a father to someone. And
yeah,
again,
no,
Joel's like
at least not
fiddling
to
with his
remember.
watch. And that was a
Exactly.
really sad moment, really sweet moment.
Yeah, no, and I think that they're a good mirror. There's a few good, yeah, there's a few, but I think they're a great mirror to Joel and Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think Joel only kind of agrees to go along with them because he sees his own struggle in
In
Henry.
Henry. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it is their demise is sad, but I think that it also solidifies Joel's fears of what's happening to him in regards to
Yeah.
Ellie.
Yeah. And in that episode, there are certain parts of the show where, again, I didn't play the game, so I don't know how accurate I was, but we'd be watching a scene and be like, this has to be a game, like a moment in the game. So when Joel is up in the window of that home and he's like sniping out all of the different infected while Ellie and Henry and Sam are running, I was like, this has to be a scene in a
Straight
game. Like you got
gameplay
to pick
section.
off as many infected. Yeah, was it?
Yeah. No, so I don't think it doesn't happen exactly like that because Kathleen is not in it. But
Right.
it there's a few moments where Joel is, I know what happens with Bill, but yes, essentially that is a segment where you are in a house and I believe that it's fairly accurate, but like I said, that particular part, it's been a few years.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can see like the gamey elements, which was totally fine. You get to see the big bloater, like that huge infected guy.
Oh, that was
Um,
horrifying.
yeah. And
Yeah.
Kathleen got her just desserts.
Yeah, thank goodness. That was beautiful to watch. Very sick of her. But then it was so sad. And I think it was the end of episode 5 when Sam asks Ellie what she thinks happens when you're infected. And you can kind of, you're like, oh my God, why is he asking? And then he pulls up
Yeah.
his pant leg and shows that he's been bitten. And the moment where Ellie is like, I think I can save you, like, and cuts herself
So
and puts
sad.
her blood on it. Oh my, I was that was another episode. I was just sobbing. I was
No, that
so
was beautifully done.
heartbroken. And then of course it doesn't work and she doesn't feel the guilt necessarily, but a little
No,
bit
I
of
think she
guilt.
does. I know. I think she totally feels guilty.
And
And I
she
think
doesn't
that
need to, but
yeah, I think that moment actually is really important for both Joel and Ellie for different reasons because I think in Ellie's mind it makes it real, like her gift, if you could call it, where it's like for Riley, who we meet later on, but it's happened before, like Ellie's friend, and now Sam, she's like, this has like I've been blessed with, if that's the word you want to use, with this immunity. Like I have to do something with it. Like I have to go
yeah.
forward for these people. And in that moment, when Joel sees Henry have to kill his own brother, and he just
Mm.
can't take it, so he kills himself. And we learn later that this is something that Joel himself has struggled with. But I think in that moment, it solidifies a Joel where it's like, oh no, like this is our fate. This is what's going to happen at some point, and I can't have this. Like when they're burying the two, and Joel just like he's like looking down at the grave, and then he looks over at Ellie. She's walking away, and I don't know. I love that episode. I think that was one of the best. Endure and survive.
Yeah, agreed. And then episode 6. So I honestly can't really. This is where they're trying to find the Fireflies. They're trying to find Tommy. It's Kin. And I think this is the one where they do come across Tommy. And first they come across that couple that have been living in the middle of nowhere. And it was a small exchange, but I loved that one where they're kind of like making fun of them. And Joel's like,
Yeah,
show on a
I
map
really
where we are and say the same as your wife. And the guy looks at his wife. He's like, did you tell him the truth? She's like, yeah, I did.
yeah. No, that was great. Those are two great characters. And just like how, and there's like they're not trying to make him afraid, but like don't cross the river. There's a great interaction where Ellie's like, you can't scare us. She's like, I scared him. I really like that. I really like that those two characters are not in the game. And just to quickly go back, because it's a theme that I want to touch on as we go on. The moment where Ellie tries to cure Sam with her blood is also not in the game. So all of the additions
Oh,
that they made, I think, are really humanize it. So there's not really that conversation with Joel and Henry. I don't believe they speak about like motorcycles and they have a moment, like a bonding moment, but
right.
not, it's more about like reliving the
The
glory days.
glory days.
No, Henry was young. Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, so a lot of these deviations I think actually make the story better. I
Yeah, just
love that
enhanced
about
it.
with that. Yeah. And so with this couple in the cabin in the woods, they're also not in it, but it just I don't know. It made it seem more human, the world. Like people still are out here living.
Yeah, no, it's a good addition. And it must be interesting as the game creator to be able to go back on a project you did and be like, how can I make this a little better? Like it's been years, I've stepped away from it. How can I refresh things a bit? And so I think every change they made, it seems like it was for the best based on what you were saying.
Totally. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I
I
really,
think that's exactly it. Is probably an opportunity to put in things that you didn't have the time or space to, or things that don't serve gameplay.
yeah,
Because in a video game, you have to have gameplay come first in a lot of ways.
no, that's so true. Yeah, that's very true. But yeah, no, they're a great addition. And then they do end up actually getting to Tommy's camp. And you can again see how Joel is a lot more invested in Ellie when the dogs are sniffing them. And you can see on his face, he's clearly wondering, even though she's immune, is this dog going to realize she's been infected and is going to rip
Yeah,
her
that was
apart?
really tense.
And you can almost, and I didn't know either. I was like, is the dog going to smell it? Like, I can't tell. And you can almost see in his eyes, like, am I going to have to kill everyone here? Like, what are we going to do? But
Yeah.
then the dog is like sniffing and playing with her. And it's the moment
Well,
passes,
he
but
has like because now it's in this episode where we start to see Joel get these anxiety attacks where it's like once they leave the
yes.
cabin, he takes a it seems like he's about to have a heart attack. And in that scene with the dog, there's a moment where he's seeing something that isn't happening because he hears the dog like bark or lunge. It's been a few weeks now since the episode aired, and I've been meaning to go back and rewatch it, but I've not. But it then cuts and it's Ellie just playing with the dog because it
Yeah.
makes you think for a second that the dog attacked her, but it's
No,
just
you're right.
Joel's like panic
Yeah.
and fear, which yeah, I love this episode. So yeah, so they get to Tom. We see Tommy again, our boy Tommy, who was in the first episode and with Sarah and Joel.
Yeah, I really like Tommy in the first episode, but then I just kind of, I don't know, he's fine, but
Yeah,
he's
he's
clearly
fine.
settled into like a happy life. But I don't know, he didn't do anything for me. I was just like, this is whatever, this is fine. It is noble that he agrees to take on Ellie when Joel is like, I can't be the one to do it. So like, he clearly has a good heart. He's a good guy. And there is this very funny scene when his wife, girlfriend, wife, whatever, is taking them through the whole commune. And Joel's like, so it's like communism. Tommy's like, no, it's not communism. And his wife is like, no, it is. It's literally communism.
Yeah,
I thought that
yeah,
was so
yeah, yeah.
funny.
It was funny. Yeah, there's a lot of hilarious moments throughout, and I really like Ellie's very witty in this episode because she's also like defending Joel. This is where she first finds out about Sarah. But the reason why I agree with you about Tommy. He's a little bland. There's just not a lot of time to flesh him out, but he's the only character where Joel can kind of open himself up to. So I think one of, if not my favorite, but certainly one of my favorite scenes in the entire series is the conversation with of Joel and Tommy discussing Ellie. And Joel has this beautiful moment about how all he's done is failed. Like you mentioned, Tess, he's failed Sarah. He has these nightmares. He doesn't remember the dreams, but he just knows that he's lost something. He's failing in his sleep. I thought that was so beautiful because it again, it goes back to what I was saying about the changes that were added because this conversation does not take place in the game. That just humanize it. Like that totally made sense. It really kind of fleshed out Joel.
Yeah, no, I totally see that. And I like their exchange in the bar too and everything. So it was nice. And yeah, I mean, I think it definitely added to the plot a bit. And it was nice to see Ellie in that more like confident role too, because there's somewhere that's a little safer. She can she's opening up and being more of herself, which is really nice. The two of them are really. So you're seeing
Yeah.
the evolution a lot in this episode.
No, and then there's and one of the best, I think, just across the board, what one of a lot of people's favorite scenes from the game. It happens in the show, and it's when Ellie finds out that Joel is going to give her to Tommy to continue on the quest because Joel can't bear to do it, and he feeds her the bullshit of so like Tommy knows the area better, like he's better, like he'll be doing better with him. And I thought they did it excellently in the show as well. But I love that moment where it's very sad when uh you see that Ellie has really come to love Joel, and you know that Joel has come to love Ellie because now he's like in his final desperate act of trying to protect himself. Uh, he's sending her off. But
Well, and she even
I
calls him
love
out
that.
too. She's like, everyone I've like known has left, and you're just going to do the same. And, she kind of gives him a hard time, almost saying, like, don't act like you're doing this for me. Like, people just
Mhm.
leave me. And it's not. And then you can see that really resonated with him because in the morning when she goes with Tommy, and I thought she was going to take off. I was like, there's no way she's going to let some random new guy take her. But, she doesn't really have a choice. And you see Joel like pack it up his own horse. And, it's just so nice to see that they have the same connection, even if they're not going to vocalize it or, even if Joel's not willing to admit it.
Yeah, that actually is what happens in the game. She runs off. And then
I figured
so
that she would. Character wise, it makes sense that she would.
yeah, so then Joel and Tommy have to go find her. And then they have that conversation where she's pissed at Joel. And I don't know. In that context, like I think that change doesn't really matter. It doesn't really make a difference. Um, but yeah, I thought it was great to see Joel just start to come around to Ellie because you could see it happening. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I love that scene. I love that whole episode just because now you're getting it where they're a team,
And it
and the
really
stakes
sets
are
up
high.
the end of this episode because that's when they go to the hospital where they're supposed to, they think they're going to find fireflies or some sort of support. And instead they run into those raiders and they encounter them. And it sets the stage for how Ellie is now going to be a bit of a protector role for Joel because this is where he gets, almost fatally wounded.
Mhm.
Um, and he's clearly trying to protect her, protect himself, get them out of there alive. And then there's that role reversal in kind of the next episode and the one after that, where Ellie needs to step up and protect him. And you can really see the love she has for him too, and the fear of going on without him, because it's a deep love, but also she's come to rely on him so much.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
she
so
even says it's like,
scary.
what do I do? Where do I go? I can't survive out here.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting because Joel's fear of failing immediately happens. It happens immediately.
I
Um,
know. Poor
the guy
Joel.
can't, yeah, he just can't catch a break. But yeah, so then the next episode after that, I think, is the mall episode because it's Ellie's flashback when she finally Joel tells her to leave. And it seems like they sell it like she's actually going to kind of leave him to die in the basement.
I honestly thought
Um,
she was for a second, but I was like, "There's no way." But they do set it up like she's going to for sure.
mhm.
Um,
So this was my least favorite episode, I think. The
why?
mall
Because
and
it
the
doesn't really
mall
add
one.
to the plot.
No, yeah, it's I think it's a necessary story. In the game, this is like a DLC. So it
Mhm.
came after the game came out. I think it was a totally necessary addition. I'm happy for the backstory, but just it was just very slow. I would have maybe would have ruined the pacing, but I'm tempted to say that I wish that these flashbacks were just kind of parsed in instead of dedicating a whole hour
Well, I think
to
that's what
it.
you're saying. I was so freaked out on the edge of my seat. What's going to happen to Joel? And then to immediately pivot to this flashback. I really liked, I thought it was beautiful. I loved the character of Riley. You
Yeah,
really get
she's
to
great. She was
understand.
great.
Yeah, and you get to understand a lot of Ellie and how she has become the way she is. And she's way more playful and fun at this point because she
Mhm.
hasn't been traumatized yet. But I think that maybe the reason you're feeling that way is because we left things on such a precipice of like, what's going to happen to Joel? What's next? We're reaching such a climax of their relationship. And then to be jerked away from that for another scene is just like, oh my God, I want to get back to Joel and Ellie.
Mhm.
I also felt like the mall scene was again super tropey, like very
Oh
almost
yeah.
80s
Mhm.
style, like let's run through the mall, but it was really cool. And I really liked it, showed the love that Riley and Ellie had, which went a little deeper than friendship, as you see in the
Mhm.
show. And I thought it was really essential, but maybe the placement somewhere else. At the same time, I think they purposely put it in there to keep you on the fence about what's going to happen to Joel. So I totally get it.
Yeah, yeah, I
But
think
it
you're
did
right.
kind of take me out of the Joel Ellie relationship. And I was like, I just want more of that right now. That said, I did think it was a really good episode.
Yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Every episode has been great. There's not been a bad episode, and no episode did I not enjoy. I just think that this was the slowest. Um, but yeah, it's for the DLC. It's a beat for beat. I think they did an excellent job at adapting it. I don't think that there were really even any real additions. They kind of go deeper into the relationship between Fedra and the Fireflies, just like
Mhm.
Ellie's and Riley's perspectives. Again, it's been a few years, but it's to my recollection, anyways. There's kind of more of like a sparring between the two characters, but you can tell that there's a deep love, and like you said, it goes beyond just friendship, which
Yeah.
makes, in some sense, the tragedy even more
That
tragic.
much worse. Well, and it's interesting because you like I kind of understood both of their sides. Obviously, Ellie is like, why would you be with these revolutionary, psychotic group? But at the same time, Riley's like, I was going to be demoted to sanitation. I mean, like this is a
Yeah,
real
yeah,
future
yeah.
for me. And she saw a way to have a family again, which is something she really missed that Ellie, whether for better or worse, likely worse, never actually experienced herself. So Riley is missing something that she's lost, something
Mhm.
that Ellie, I'm sure, misses but never had. And I just
Yeah.
like I totally got Riley's perspective and I just felt for her. I
Yeah, yeah.
understood
No,
why
they
she
did a
wanted
great
to do
job.
that.
No,
And the
I agree.
ending when they both got bit. Well, first of all, when they're like when Ellie's celebrating, she's like, "We did it! Oh my God!" Can you like riding that adrenaline high of killing this infected and surviving? But then to see that they both got bit and the way that Ellie goes from pure rage, she's breaking everything. Oh my God, Bella Ramsey's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
great.
Very
And then just the
dramatic.
defeat, the depression, the sadness of it all. And Riley saying, let's just take every moment we can. There was something so, again, so romantic
Yeah,
in
we'll
that
just lose our minds
helplessness.
together or whatever.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And it was just so sad. And I really do like that they didn't even show us the scene. It's so clear what happened. We knew Ellie had killed someone before. They didn't need to be gratuitous about it and show us that
Yeah.
like devolution, I guess, of Riley and descending into this madness of the cordyceps. They just left it unsaid, and it didn't need to be said. And
I think it actually adds to it because like you just if they piece together, it's not a puzzle, like but it makes it a little more. I don't know. Like if she would just was outwardly to say it, I think it would actually take away from how, like you said, how traumatized. I mean, this would be traumatizing for anyone, but for like a 13, 14-year-old girl, um, like horrible. Like now, obviously, that would scar you. Like, and this, we'll get into this later, but and that is the one thing maybe that you could levy against Joel. Now, we'll discuss the ending, um, because I really want to get your thoughts. But one thing that to take away a defense from Joel is everyone in this world has suffered something like he suffered, and that's kind of what Ellie says in the cabin, just about how like she's like, because Joel's like, you don't know what loss is, and she's like, oh, that's all I know. Like,
Yeah.
and so Joel kind of his own trauma is totally validated and real, but I think he kind of wears it like he's the only one that has lost so much.
Yes. I know. I felt so mad at him. Like, how ignorant. You don't know anything about this girl or her life. Like, to act like you're the only one who suffers in a post-apocalyptic world. Like, please, you don't have a license on suffering here. So I liked that she kind of checked him a little bit and was like, you don't even understand. I've literally lost everyone. And that helps them get to know each other a little more too, because he didn't even think about that and, you know, the past that she might have had. So I think that kind of stopped him a little bit and made him realize that, you know, he isn't the only one who suffered.
No, exactly. And so Ellie has as well. And I think that Ellie and Joel are very similar. I think that they kind of have given traits to one another. I think but I think they share a lot. And we'll see this in the next episode with David, when Ellie is defined as having a violent heart. And I think that's true. I mean, you see that at the beginning of the mall episode when she's in the school and she gets in this fight with this bigger girl. And yeah, you can just tell that Ellie herself has some of that animalistic kind of the rage, exactly, like the blind, bloody rage, which is great.
No, as someone who has rage deep within them, and I know you do too, it's nice to see that in people. You're like, yes, I understand it. And a lot of times it can get you in trouble, but yeah, but it also is like a survivalist technique. And it's certainly the reason she survives in episode 8, which was my favorite episode. So I'm really excited to talk about that one. But yeah, David was a creepy character, worse than Kathleen. Ew, I despised him, but in the way that I love when an actor can make me despise them, because it just means you're doing a really good job.
Yeah, so because I agree. This might be my favorite as well, whole episode. But this when I said at the beginning how I wished that I was watching for the first time. It was really this part that I was talking about. You're not sure if Joel's going to survive. You meet David. Like, what did you like? I obviously knew what the twist, the cannibalism and all was coming, but like, did you?
My husband called it out immediately. I would not have known. And sometimes watching shows with him, I'm like, oh my God. But you kind of saw the cracked out look of everybody in the commune. And then they were talking about meat and like, it's deer. And immediately he was like, they're eating people. This is the look when there's cannibals on TV. These people are eating people, calling it right now. It's like, Jordan, no, there's no way. Immediately,
the poor girl at the start who asks like if they can bury her father, and he's like, no, not until spring. The ground's too cold. You can't bury someone in the winter.
And then when he had a huge portion and everyone else had a smaller one, it was just it made me sick. But I will say at first, I didn't think he was that evil. Like when David first meets Ellie, she's shot the deer and they're trying to take the deer. And he's speaking to her about, I used to be a teacher, now I'm a preacher. I didn't think he was necessarily evil, but my husband was like, no, he is. And anyway, he called it. And he turns sinister really quickly. So you do start to realize, okay, this is, clearly
it doesn't because it progresses slowly. Because he tells James, who we talked about this, but I think it's very cool how they incorporated the actors from the game. So James is the guy who originally played Joel in the games. And when David tells James to go get the medication, like he gives, like, that's a penicillin, like antibiotics, that's a very valuable resource to just give. So I don't know. I thought that they did a good job at ramping up, like, okay, something's as soon as like you're in you get the cultish vibe. It's always when there's like the biblical readings, it's on the nose. I think that it's just like, what they're selling here, where it's like, okay, this is gonna go south. But I still think that they did a good job at kind of progressing the horror of who David was.
Definitely. And it escalated to a point I would have never imagined when, that climactic scene between him and Ellie, when he like really shows his true colors. It even took a while for him to get to that. So, he gives her the penicillin, she leaves, but then he makes it clear to his crew that they're going to track and, bring justice down. And that's where you could start to see like, okay, this is a little bit evil. Like, is there really a necessity in this justice? But even then, it seems like he tries to stop his own people from killing Ellie. He fires a shot into the air when he sees that they're about to come for her. And I kept thinking, okay, like maybe he's just,
looking
a
out for a
good
child. He
cannibal.
thinks that she's with like this horrible villain, like a bloodthirsty person, and she's just a victim in her own life.
Yeah, but then it's their interaction when he has her in the cell that is
Oh,
very
he gets a
creepy. And
little
oh my God, it was so creepy. The like rapey vibes of him
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Like you're
exactly.
not just evil, you're a pedophile cannibal. Like what?
Yeah,
It was
his
so
goals
much.
seem, his aims are a little more clear with like the hand touching. You can tell that he wants some concubine, some young,
Ew. And the way he's like trying to make her a partner, like she is a child. I just immediately was
that
disgusted.
was revolting.
And when she sees the ear, I mean, that was, again, Jordan was like, I already called this, but that was like the full, okay, they're officially eating people. And it was really creepy. So he
Uh,
turned quickly, but it was a slow burn to that moment.
yeah, and I love that scene when Ellie's in the cage. It was a great scene in the game. It's beat for beat essentially in the show, and Bella did a fantastic job because you do see that violence, like when she breaks his finger. It's
Loved
I'm
that
telling the
moment.
little girl broke your fucking finger. I like
Yeah.
she's got so many one-liners, and I'm so glad that they took a lot of her quotes pulled directly from the game because she's a fantastic character. And in this moment, I thought this episode in particular is when I thought like I was already sold on Bella by episode 2,
Yeah.
but I was like this she's Ellie, like she
Yeah.
just straight up Ellie.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So then it goes. They at that point Joel has kind of revitalized himself
Well,
because
because
Ellie
there is
gave
a
him the
moment where
medicine.
Ellie, exactly, she came down, she gave him the medicine, she gave him a knife, and was like, just don't let these people kill you. And she leaves. And then, of course, immediately some guy finds the door behind the bookcase. Like, I guess
Yeah,
they
that
just
was a
didn't want
little
to show a lot of
convoluted.
delay. Like, immediately finding them was just a little
You
much.
want to just put him like
Um,
why hide if you're just gonna immediately just have him in the house? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was a lot. But I mean, then he immediately dismisses of that guy. And then before we get back to Ellie and that big climactic scene with David, one of the best Joel scenes I've ever seen, which I know was very ruthless, but I don't care. I
Oh,
loved it. And
I
I
agree.
think
I
you
know what
said
you're
it
gonna
was in
say.
the game when he has both of those, he has two guys that he's interrogating and he's stabbing one guy in the knee with a knife. And he's
So
like, point on the
satisfying.
map where we are. And
Pop in
so
the
the guy
knee.
points and then show me where they're taking her. And he points, and the second he gets the information, he kills that guy. And the second hostage is like, "Why did you kill him? I'm not going to tell you anything." And that line, "That's all right, I believe him."
Yeah,
Oh, gut punch is
fantastic.
perfect.
I was so because I this was even though at this point they had done almost 1-to-1 so well, still I was like because I love that scene in the games. It's very satisfying. I was still like, I don't know if they'll do this because this is really
It's
just
savage.
like it's yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
savage
aggressive.
and it's not that I think that they'll shy away from violence, but just I didn't know if they wanted to kind of delve into like making violence seem like it's heroic or something. But and I don't think that's the impression perhaps they want you to have, but it's kind of the impression that I got because I agree. I love that. Like when he raises the bat and like you said, like, I was like yeah, do exactly that.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to be said. I think we could do a whole separate thing on, is Joel a moral character? I think the answer is
I
no.
want to
But at
get
the
to that at
same
the end
time,
because
he leads.
it culminates at the end of the story. But
Yes, you're right. So we will talk about that. But there are definitely some gray areas, and this is one of them. And was this the right thing to do? No. Was it amazing
no, I
television? Yes.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so then as that's happening, like you said, there's like a showdown between Ellie and David.
That was intense.
Mhm.
So I mean, she's so smart. She just always has like she pulled out that kind of trump card at the very end where David is pissed at her now. She's humiliated him. He's about to strap her down to that table, and she's like, "No, no, no, wait, I'm infected," and
Yeah,
totally throws
genius,
everything
master
off.
stroke.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And even then, even though he doesn't believe her necessarily, because he's like, I've spent enough time with this girl, there's just no way, something's fishy here. It still gives her enough time, which starts her butchery of these people. She grabs that butcher's knife, and gamer Joel, what's his name,
Yeah,
James,
James. I like
immediately
Gamer Joel.
taken out. Yeah, that was crazy. So even then, at that point, my hands were over my mouth for the rest of the episode. Like it was
Mhm.
just shocking. So she disposes of Gamer Joel very quickly. And then she has this like cat and mouse game with David that was just so suspenseful the whole time. And this is where
Mhm.
David was just sick. And they again do such a good job. I hated this guy so much by
Yeah,
the end
you
of it.
really hate him.
I was so happy to see his ending. Was it the same in the game? I mean, the way she's hiding from him and then
It's exactly
she
the
had
same.
to fight her. She had to save herself. He was killing her. He was grabbing her and choking her, and the knife is just out of reach. And then the second she gets it, she just let loose on him. And again, like it, is that the best thing to do? I don't know, but it was good TV, and I was with Ellie all the way.
I mean, in that essence, I think the one with Joel is up for debate. I'll side with Joel, but I can recognize that, in this instance, like it's an unfortunate reality. But I think both in the games and in the shows, there's like they're really it's not so subtle, but that they're kind of intimating at he's about to rape her.
Yes.
Like because Ellie gets the chance to grab the blade when he's it seems like it's off camera, but it seems like he's going to pull his pants down.
Her. Yeah.
So I think that she goes buck wild.
Crazy.
Which is the
Something
violence
snaps.
in her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you asked if that was in the game, and that's exactly how it goes down. And I like with the cabin in the woods, there's the salmon hunter one, and this also is probably one of the top 3 moments of the whole story. It's happened slightly. We spoke briefly about this. It happened slightly different, where Ellie is able to get out, but I think it's a great moment for Ellie and for Joel because
that's right. I do recall you telling me now that in the game, Joel actually pulls her off David's
he stops
corpse.
the savagery.
Because at this point, David's already dead, but he stops her from just continuing.
Yeah, because he doesn't want Ellie to go down this road. Like he's already apologized to her, the fact that and he lamented to Tommy how because he's slow and deaf, she had to kill someone or hurt someone. So I think it's really heartbreaking for him to see the destruction that Ellie causes, which he doesn't really see in the show, but of course it's implied.
Right. Well, he couldn't save her, but in a way, it just showed that Ellie can save herself, and that's really powerful.
Exactly.
But that moment and I think it is really similar in the game. I don't know. You can tell me. But when she leaves the cabin and she's like hyperventilating and he grabs her and she just starts, going right back into fight mode. And I didn't even know the symbolism of this because I didn't remember that in the first episode, Joel calls his daughter baby girl. But when he's like, it's all right, baby girl, I got you. Again, tears everywhere. It was just so beautiful. And then you were telling me that that's the huge symbolism of that, which didn't even resonate with me. And I still felt so impacted by that scene, was that he's really seen Ellie as his daughter now, because that's exactly what he used to call Sarah.
Exactly. It's a pivotal moment. And it's exceptionally done. I loved it in the games. I loved it in the show. Like I said, it's again one of those moments, the many moments that brings a tear to your eye. And then there's a shot in the show when he's hugging her. The watch is like just like they're like right beside each other. Like you can see that, like, this is Sarah now.
Well, not Sarah, but this is his, like, this is, he
no,
sees his daughter,
but you kind of get that vibe in episode 9 at the end, where in a sense, I think really Joel sees kind of a parallel
Sarah in her. Yeah. Well, he's making those comparisons, and I mean, it's the perfect time to segue into that last episode, because that is how episode 8 ends, with a beautiful baby girl moment that had everyone losing their damn minds, myself included. And then beautiful. We just saw the finale, and I mean, that was also perfect. I loved it. And you can see that now Joel he knows that Ellie has been traumatized, and he's kind of trying to fill that void. So Joel, who was never talkative before, always shut down, is opening up more. When he asks her to read some puns to him as they're walking along, like, wow, you're trying right now, bud. And it was really sweet.
Exactly. But there's a neat little reversal, because Ellie is very closed off, and it seems like she's really damaged by what happened at David. I mean, the whole journey. Yeah, totally. But I think David was kind of like the final straw, where it's all the whole journey has weighed down so much on her, because now Joel, who acknowledges and fully accepts this new love, or the love that he has for Ellie, is now, like you said, happy-go-lucky. He's talking about getting a guitar, but there's a wonderful scene that again is not in the games in this episode here, where Joel says, when Ellie asks like how he got the scar, and she's like, oh, is this the one where Buddy missed? And he's like, yes, but that was me. I love that scene. I thought it was so beautiful about how he said he was going to kill himself, and it just happenstance that he missed.
It was sad. And he was kind of pushing her to understand why things have changed for him, when he's like, it wasn't time that healed this wound. And she's actually kind of deflecting. Like, she's not ready to kind of express how she's feeling, because there's just so much going on in her mind. I'm sure, like, she's been so heavily traumatized that I think this is just a lot for her. But he's feeling like it's important for him to express and communicate how much she really means to him. I felt like it was kind of heavy, like a lot of info to unpack for this 14-year-old to be like, hey, I tried to kill myself and like I feel better now because of you. But I agree, it was really beautiful. His intention with that was to show
Uh,
her how much she means to him. And I think
yeah,
he really did
and
that.
both actors, but in this scene, especially Pedro, I think he just like he's got these subtle eye movements, and you just see like his whole face change.
Yeah.
And when he says like it wasn't time, like it made me tear up immediately. I thought it was
And he
so
like
well done.
roughly wipes his eyes and
Mhm.
stuff. And he just doesn't want to show that emotion, even though that's exactly what he's trying to do with her. He still just can't,
Yeah,
emote.
he's still a
Such a
manly
typical
man.
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it
But
was really
but this
beautiful. I liked
this
it.
episode, what I really also loved about the finale was they throughout the whole series we got music from the game.
Hmm.
To the only one of the few criticisms I would have is I think that there was music in the game that they've used in the show, but they change when it's put in. And I don't know if the changes were necessary because I think music, as we spoke with in Lord of the Rings, really elevates.
Totally.
But in this show, in this episode, it was perfect. And throughout this whole scene, you get that guitar, and I don't know, like it's really coming together. You feel like, okay, like we've made it, like things are looking up.
Yeah. And
Um,
he even has that moment where he's like, we don't have to go. Like, we could just
yeah,
go back to Tommy's. Like, we don't have to do this. And then, like you were saying before, Ellie's seen so much loss and probably felt guilt for being like survivor's guilt, where she's like, no, no, I have to see this through. Like, if I could have a cure, I have to keep going. And you can almost tell that he now feels so connected to her and doesn't want to risk it. He is almost suggesting they don't keep going, but Ellie is committed and she has to go on.
100%. I think that's exactly. I think Joel positions it like for you, but I think that's a totally selfish thing. And he wants her to say, let's just go back because
Yeah.
he has his daughter. For him, mission accomplished. He doesn't
Yeah.
give a like the vaccine means nothing to him. He's
Yeah.
made that clear from the
As we see
beginning.
later. But no,
Yeah,
exactly. He
yeah,
has. At
yeah,
first she was cargo and now she's like his. And he's like, I'm not giving her up for what? The world that
yeah.
I've already kind of turned my back on.
And to go back to just Pedro's eyes, there's a beautiful scene when they come across the giraffe, which is a fan
Mhm.
favorite moment in the games. I'm really glad they put it in because it's just very
It was
sweet.
beautiful.
And they have this exchange where it's after this, where Joel says that they can just go back to Tommy's, and Ellie's just like, no, like we'll see it through. But then she's like, but after, I will
That's
fall.
right.
I'll go with
I'll follow
you
you
anywhere.
anywhere.
And you just see, and then when the scene ends, you can't. I caught it really quickly, but he's just beaming. He's smiling so much as he like walks off screen. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
They're such a great acting. Like you can see that they feed each other's energy, like they're feeding off each other. And
Totally.
you're right, the subtleties in both of them, in their facial
Yeah.
expressions and how they're communicating well beyond just their words with each other is so beautiful. And you're totally right about that scene. It
They're
was
the
so
characters.
nice.
I never, because like going, even though I was fine with the casting before the show started, I was adamant, and not even in like a pig-headed way, but I was like, this is going to be probably going to be great regardless. But I don't know if it'll reach the games. But they're 1-to-1.
Yeah.
I want to hammer that point home where they did the Bella and Pedro did such incredible jobs in these roles. I'm blown away.
No, me too. It was so impressive. And that's a huge accolade from you too, as someone who was so invested in the game. Like for me, this was my first experience with the characters. So they just feel like them to me. But to see that, I remember how much you loved this game when it first came out. And so to know that they represent the characters that much for you as well, it's really impressive. It just shows what an amazing job they did to really encompass the characters and, every little nuance, how important it is from the words to the actions as well. They both, clearly tried to emulate their characters and they completely succeeded. It's
Totally.
beautiful.
And so the woman who plays Ellie in the game, her, Ashley Johnson, I think, and Troy Baker's
Right.
Joel,
She's the
she's the
mom.
mother. And
Hmm.
and I thought it was great that there's roles for both Troy and Ashley, but there's the close-up scenes during Ellie's pregnancy. I was like looking at her face and I was like, she actually really looks like Bella. Like their
That's
facial
what Jordan and
structure
I
or
were
something. I was
saying.
like,
This,
they're so
yes.
similar.
It was, the casting was so on point because we saw her, it's the beginning of the finale episode where she's running through the woods and we were like, that has to be Ellie's mom because she literally looks like Ellie. They must have cast her purposely for that.
Like
And then I found
the
out
side
after,
profile. Yeah, like,
yes, it was really, really crazy. She looked perfect. And that scene was also terrible. You find out that Marlene has actually known Ellie since birth and the horrible choice she had to make to kill her friend, Ellie's mom, because she was becoming infected and, begging Marlene to kill her. that whole scene was beautiful. And I didn't know until after, because I always check out what the kids are saying on Twitter when I'm done one of these episodes, that was Gamer Ellie. But it's really cool that Gamer Joel and Gamer Ellie had little cameos and got to be part of this whole experience too. I really like that.
No, I agree. And so that whole scene with Ellie's mother is not in the game. At first I was not sure why they put it in until you see Marlene come, and it's like, okay, to make it clear that there's a relationship here. And then I
And
guess they
also,
wanted to feed into the idea of how Ellie gets immune.
exactly, right? Because Ellie's mom says to Marlene, I cut the umbilical cord before I was bit. But we
Which was a
know as the
lie.
viewers that that's not true. So it's like
Yeah.
she got just enough cordyceps to be immune or something. I don't know how
Yeah,
exactly it
yeah.
happened, but that was my takeaway.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. And I think one thing that, and maybe we're coming up to it, so I don't know if we can get into it now, but that's one thing that the game does not a bit better. They're both do it similar, where with the whole idea of this vaccine, there's a lot of guesswork.
Yeah.
Like, it's not sold as a given thing.
No, I agree. I think they made that clear in the show. Like, we're gonna
Yeah.
cut her. So let's just get to that part. So they, after the reading the puns, Ellie and Joel are taken by this group. They find out it's the Fireflies. Joel wakes up and Marlene's in the room, and she's like, "So we have a doctor. He thinks if we cut her brain open and remove the cordyceps, that we might be able to." Like, it's also what ifs, maybes, buts. It did not feel like there was actually confidence that this was going to lead to a cure. It wasn't like a cut and dry, this is our cure, this is it. Unfortunately, Ellie's going to die. And it's actually Joel who makes that connection. He's like, but cut it out of her. Cordyceps is in the brain. And Marlene is like, yeah, don't worry, we didn't tell her, which is so messed up. I understand not wanting to cause fear in her, but you're not even letting her make this choice. Like, so messed up of them to just say, we're not going to tell her, we're just going to cut her open and kill her for science. And I did think it was
totally
so open-ended that, like, I understood Joel, and I think this is where we get to Joel's morally very gray area. But I understood his vehement response of, like, you're not just going to cut her brain open for a what if and a gamble.
No, absolutely. And I think I'm not going to say it's a criticism on the writing itself, but it kind of begs the question, like, it's for how it went down, this is how it had to happen. But it begs the question of, like, if you want, because I think what Neil Druckmann was trying to do, like the writer, both writers at this point, I think they were trying to broach it of, like, it could be one or the other. Maybe Joel's right. Maybe these people are validated, but they kind of shoot themselves in the foot, both in the game and in this scene, because they immediately rush Ellie into a surgery. They don't let Joel see her. So in the game, it happens only slightly differently, where they're in some tunnel or something, and it's Ellie. Both of them get knocked out. And then they're taken to the hospital, and Ellie's immediately prepped for surgery without ever regaining consciousness. She never knows that they were Fireflies.
Right.
And so it's more or less, it's the same, but
Yeah.
it's just like, how can you sympathize with these people when they don't speak to Ellie about it? They don't tell her, like, they don't even want to make sure that it's okay. Like, if she's okay with this sacrifice, they don't give her a day. They don't give her even a last fucking meal. They don't let Joel see her, who traveled with her for essentially a year at this point, or close to it.
I think they must want you to relate to Joel more, because I was fully on board with Joel's. I mean, he made some messed up decisions in this next scene that I don't know that I could agree with, but the way that they went about it was so morally disgusting as well. It's like, it is such an interesting conversation about who is right here, because yes, the greater good, and you want to do something to save society, totally. But to go about it in this destructive way, you can have, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And the way that they're acting here, disgusting and despicable. And, like, you can't agree with it. You can't just take away someone's free will and take away their life involuntarily and then act like you're not a murderer. Like, you just
Exactly. And there's I don't think it should be dwelled upon too much, or like, but so in the game you can collect, like, as most video games have, there's little collectibles and whatnot. So throughout the game, there's little audio files. When you come to this area, you can get one, and it's from the doctors who are working on this vaccine. And in the recording, or maybe it's a note, they say how they have found immune people before, and every time they've tried to make a vaccine, it's failed, and the person that they tried to get it out has died. So that, like, now that's just a little add-on collectible. So I don't, in my mind, I always, because I was always for Joel's decision 100%. But I use that as, like, and look, here's, they're even admitting that. But I don't think that should have been in the game, and I'm glad they didn't put this idea in the show outside of Joel's just, like, guesswork, because I think it does. I think that it makes the decision more kind of
morally
fucked.
ambiguous.
Yeah, exactly. Better, a more poetic way of saying it. By being like, it's a maybe. It's not like a probably not, but hey, let's try it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, let's just get right into it because it's at this moment where Marlene is an idiot. Do you not know what Joel's capable of at this point?
Yeah.
Two guys, just take him out and escort him out. And if he tries anything, shoot him. And then just he immediately turns on them. And that scene, again, I don't think I'm supposed to feel this way, but watching Joel just go through and take everybody down. Like I was on his side, but I was so shocked. The one guy who surrendered and like put his weapons down and put his hands up, and then he still shot him. I was like, okay, Joel, what are you doing? Like, I'm really trying to be on your side. This is so messed up. But he was in a take no prisoners moment, and you just lens on like, I'm finding my daughter. And I don't know, I couldn't totally fault him for it, but like I get how messed up it was, and it was messed up. And Joel is kind of morally fucked, as you would say.
Yeah, I totally agree with that analysis, and that's why I think I love the ending. I think that this is like when season 2 comes out, we'll have that whole discussion. There's no spoilers here, but all that's worth saying is this was such a beautiful masterclass of a self-contained story that is just perfection. And this ending is so great because it's so controversial. You could totally say with, great utility that Joel is morally ambiguous here. And like he was too
or like
brutal.
morally wrong, you could even argue.
Yeah, you
certainly.
could. And now I would wholeheartedly disagree. But at least in this situation, I can see where someone is coming from.
There's
because
a debate there.
Yeah, exactly. And like that is fantastic writing.
Well, and polarizing your audience is like one of the best things you can do because it gets people so invested and gets people talking about it. And I'm sure there are people out there that was like, that was so over the top. It was disgusting. Like we shouldn't be glorifying this kind of action. And I agree with them. But at the same time, I just feel like I can understand where Joel is coming from. When the people you love are in danger, you turn into almost an animalistic side of yourself of I'm going to do whatever I can. And he made the decision. He was going to do whatever the hell he had to do. And it was crazy. And it probably was not the right thing to do. And probably Ellie wouldn't have wanted him to either, because that moment after he's gone through everything and Marlene finds him in the garage and she's like, you're taking her choice away from her, just like we are. You don't know that she wouldn't go through with this, which I think is very gaslighting of Marlene. Like, come on. Okay. You took her choice away.
She's
first.
Right. But totally it was gaslighting.
Yeah. And I loved though how they left that scene kind of ambiguous for a second. She's like, you can still get away from this. She puts her gun down, and then next thing you see is Joel driving away with this defeated look on your face. And I was like, she's in the back seat, but you for a couple seconds you don't know, and then it shows Ellie in the back, and he has his lie ready to go, and explains what you just said, that there's been many infected or immune people, they haven't been able to make it work. Raiders came out of nowhere, I had to save you. And then it cuts back to his moment with Marlene, where he just, again, this was so ruthless. He shoots her and she's like, please just let me go. And he's like, you'll just come after her, and he kills her. Like, what? That was messed up, man. That was so messed up. But also
totally. It was, Team Joel 100%. I have no shame in saying it. So that the ending, I'm so glad that, like you said, how they did the cuts. So that's exactly how it went down in the game, and I'm really glad that they did that to build that suspense. Because for the first time going through, you kind of know, but you're not sure. You're like, wait, did he? And especially to Pedro, he's got the you see this doubt in his eyes, and then So okay, let's summarize here. Are you Team Joel? Like, did he make the right decision? And you can contextualize what right is in this situation.
I do not think Joel made the right decision, but at the same time, I personally am really happy that he saved Ellie. I think the way he went about it was really he crossed a line. He crossed a line that a lot of people in their lives don't. And I don't think as a person, when you do that, you can ever come back from it. So I think that maybe season 2 is going to see how this impacts their relationship. What's kind of messed up of me, because maybe this says that I am morally an ambiguous person, I think it's worse that he lied to her about it. And you can see in the end clip where she kind of out of the blue, he's rambling about Sarah and the similarities between Sarah and Ellie and how they would love each other. And she kind of turns to him and she's like, tell me honestly, did everything go down the way you're telling me with the fireflies? Swear it. And he says, yeah, I swear. And you can just tell she doesn't believe him. And I think that's going to fester in their relationship. And I don't think he should have lied to her. I think he should have been honest and let her make that choice. And it's selfish of him. Again, he has his daughter back and he doesn't want to lose her, and he's acting selfishly. I think that's the worst. I mean, it's not worse than murder, but I think that it compounds the bad things he did to save her by not even letting her make that final decision for herself and being honest with her about what happened. So I love Joel, and I'm still team Joel, and I'm so happy he saved her, but I don't think I could have done those things, and I don't think it was the right thing to do, even though it selfishly makes me happy. What do you think?
I think that's actually a great analysis. I think you hit the nail on the head when ultimately Joel is selfish. This is a selfish decision. But I agree with you. I think that the lie was the worst part. I understand why he did it, but I don't agree with that. But everything up until that, I think he made the right choice. Now, yes, he was brutal and perhaps went over the top. There's a man who has yielded and he's killed him.
That was too much.
He's on a rampage. But I think, no, I'm not saying that I'm capable of these things. I will never be in a situation where this is a reality, and thank
Never
God
know.
for that, because I would fail. I would just get shot. I would never make it to the hospital, but I would. When I went to in the stairwell, I would just get shot in the back of the head. But I think I don't want to be too critical here, but for the opposing viewpoint, which I know you haven't taken, I think it's disingenuous to say that, like he shouldn't have done it. Because I don't know if you could ask any parent, I cannot imagine that any parent would be like, oh yeah, no, that's fine. Like that
No,
he would be more in the right to just let this happen. Now it was very violent, but I think they kind of deserved it. And I loved seeing Joel on the rampage.
The
I think
was
it's
great.
warranted. Like I think it was warranted. Now the killing of the doctor.
The doctor had a scalpel. Like he was exactly. That was too much. I don't even know if he killed the nurses, but he didn't on screen. Thank God. I think the writers realized
in the game,
that would have been
it's the player's
too much.
choice, and you don't have to everyone go. It's so hilarious because when you go in, you're in this mood, and everyone lights up the whole room. But you can actually just take Ellie without killing any of the doctors, and you can just leave.
Oh my God! I would love to know the percentages of who doesn't kill them and who does.
Because you're in that mode. Like there's.
You got the bloodlust.
Fine, maybe people's values are different, but for the average person, I think people do value their close relations, the people they love, over some bigger picture.
Well, especially when it's a video game, it's not a real choice you're making. It's
but I think it's a good insight into the human heart, because I think there will be a lot of controversy about it.
Well, and even his like what he says to Marlene, you just come after her. How are they going to know where you are? It's overkill. It was a lot. Yeah. And it's hard to justify, and I can't justify it. But at the same time, again, my hands were over my mouth the whole scene, but I was rooting for Joel the whole time. I obviously didn't want anyone to take him down. But I think that this is going to be an open dialogue in articles that write about this, Twitter, where everyone goes mad, Reddit, whatever. And I'm sure that people have really polarizing views on this. And I think there's a lot of people that like us are like, oh, Team Joel, that was sick. But, there are definitely people out there who are like, this is just glorifying violence and this was way too far. And, there's cases to be made for all. But I do think what you said about any parent who has the opportunity to save their child, I don't know, I'm not a parent, but I can imagine that you would go to any lengths possible. And I think that's what they're trying to show, even if it is a little bit of a selfish choice. I mean, he wants to save Ellie, not
Love
purely.
Is selfish, though.
Well, wow, you just opened up a big box. But yeah, in a way, it really is. And I mean,
that
he
level
was driven
of it,
by that.
It's an unhealthy degree.
In a weird way.
Yeah, it is. But no, I think you're right. There will be a lot of conversation. I think, again, I think that just shows the masterclass of the writing. Yeah. I'm firm in my stance, but I think it's great that there is a conversation. But like you said with the parent thing, I think there's just something in us as a species where
when it gets triggered, it will you'll just take over.
Yeah, it's just there are things that are the things I value are more important than the things that you value when push comes to shove.
Inherent selfishness in all of us. Well, I also think we'd love to hear what everyone else thinks. Do you think our good takes are good? Are they horrible? Are we terrible people for being on team morally ambiguous Joel? So yeah, leave us comments on what you thought about the whole episode or the whole season, but this episode in particular, how it ended. We definitely want to hear from you and, understand if there's people like us that agree with this, or if you feel like we've got it totally wrong and this isn't a good take. So definitely comment, let us know what you think. And we're happy to keep an open dialogue on it, because I think it's an ongoing conversation that's going to be prevalent for quite some time.
Totally. I'm looking forward to season 2. Season 1, a 10 out of 10. I there's a recency bias in that. But I think this is one of the greatest pieces of television that I've ever seen.
I agree with
so
you.
I would highly recommend everyone. I'm assuming people have watched it. If you haven't played the game, go do it. Put it on easy mode if you're not a gamer. You get a little like the game has its strengths. There's just a few moments between Joel and Ellie that you know, you can delve into that relationship a bit. But it's a fantastic story, and season 2, I think I'm excited. We'll see what happens.
Me too. We'll definitely cover a good take on season 2 whenever that comes out. And if you're still here with us, stick around for all of the other content. We're still diving deep into Lord of the Rings. We're going to have a bunch of other TVs, books, games at this point. You know, everything's on the table. So if you've been with us this far, keep it coming. Like and subscribe, comment, keep us updated on, you know, your takes on everything. And let's keep this going. But it's been really cool so far. This was a great episode. I loved diving into this this whole kind of TV show gaming experience with you. So looking forward to doing many more. But yeah, love this one.
Agreed.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you next time for another Good Takes. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.